Welcome to FM Coins. Today, we dive into a story that begins more than 8 decades ago, a story shaped by war, art, industry, national identity, and the incredible journey of a tiny piece of metal that would become one of Canada's most iconic treasures, the Canadian 5-cent coin with the beaver on a log design. The year was 1937, a time when Canada was transforming. The world was standing on the edge of conflict, industries were evolving, and the Royal Canadian Mint wanted a fresh start, a new set of designs that would represent a strong, modern nation. To achieve this, they reached out to a British artist, George Edward Kruger Gray, a master of symbolic coin design. His challenge was simple yet profound. Create a design that captures the spirit of Canada in a single image. What emerged was the now legendary beaver sitting proudly on a log, surrounded by calm water, symbolizing hard work, endurance, and the rugged beauty of the Canadian wilderness. The beaver had been part of Canada's heritage for centuries, and from the fur trade days to the country's economic foundations. And suddenly this small creature became the face of the Canadian nickel. But behind this simple design lies a twist-filled history. As World War II approached, Canada faced shortages of nickel, a metal crucial for the war effort. This forced the Royal Canadian Mint to experiment with new materials and new minting techniques. Some nickels were struck on substitute metals, some were made in extremely low numbers, and others were minted with dyes not meant for circulation. These unexpected changes created rare errors, transitional pieces, and ultra-low-mintage coins, the exact types of coins that today sell for thousands, even hundreds of thousands, and in extreme rarity, values estimated in the millions. Then came the post-war years, when the mint continued refining the design, adjusting metal composition, experimenting with planches, and producing varieties that collectors now desperately search for. From accidental double dyes to wrong planche strikes, from rare proof patterns to coins that were never meant to leave mint vaults. The story of the Canadian 5-cent coin is filled with moments of pure numismatic magic. And today, these small coins, they once used to buy candy, newspapers, and train fares, have become hidden treasures. Many are still tucked away in old boxes, drawers, and forgotten piggy banks across Canada. Several ranks among the most valuable Canadian coins ever discovered, sometimes attracting bidding wars that push their value into the million-dollar range. In this video, we uncover those legendary pieces. We explore the history behind them, the dramatic events that created them, and the incredible prices collectors pay today. So get ready, because the next rare treasure might be hiding in your pocket, in your old collection, or somewhere in your home. Now we will talk about the first and most valuable Canadian 5-cent coin. Now we will talk about the first and most valuable Canadian 5-cent coin and the legendary 1947 Doty nickel, a coin whose value can reach life-changing amounts. Among all beaver-designed nickels, no coin carries more mystery, drama, and explosive value than the 1947 Doty Canadian 5 cents. This coin is not just rare, it is ultra-rare. A once-in-a-generation treasure that collectors dream of finding. Its story begins in a historic moment of political change. In 1947, India gained independence, which meant King George VI's title Emperor of India had to be removed from all future. Canadian coins. The Royal Canadian Mint prepared new dyes for 1948, but delays struck unexpectedly. Canada could not stop minting coins. Businesses, shops, and banks desperately needed fresh currency. So the mint created a temporary solution. Continue striking coins with the old 1947 date, but add a tiny dot beside the year to show they were actually minted in early 1948. That microscopic mark would later create a monster of value. But here's where the rarity becomes unbelievable. Because the new dyes arrived quicker than expected, the mint used the 1947 dot, dyes only for a very short time, producing an extremely tiny number of coins. Historians believe fewer than 25 pieces may survive today. Some experts argue only 10-12 known examples exist in collectible condition. This makes the 1947 DOT nickel rarer than many gold coins, rarer than early colonial issues, and rarer than some famous million-dollar American coins. And the prices? This is where the story becomes shocking. A genuine certified 1947 dot nickel can sell for $150,000 to $400,000 depending on condition. High-grade examples have reached past $500,000 at major auctions, and experts agree that if a perfect, mint-state specimen ever appears, It could easily break the $1,000 mark, making it one of the most valuable Canadian coins of all time. Even lower-grade pieces that show wear, if authentic, can sell for $30,000 to $70,000, proving that any example is a treasure. What collectors love most is the mystery surrounding this coin. The Royal Canadian Mint kept incomplete records during this transition period. Nobody knows the exact mintage. Some believe the surviving coins are leftover test strikes. Others believe they were emergency pieces made in a single rushed day. Every coin is analyzed under microscopes, with collectors studying dot placement, die cracks, rim details, and metal flow lines to confirm authenticity. Imagine a coin once worth 5 cents, now commanding $500,000 or more. Imagine a coin so rare that even major museums are missing it from their collections. And imagine that somewhere in Canada, inside an old cookie tin, a forgotten piggy bank, a dusty drawer, or a box inherited from grandparents, one of these near-mythical treasures could still be hiding. The 1947 dot nickel is not just a coin. It is a symbol of a nation in transition, a product of wartime shortages, political change, emergency minting, and human error. And it stands today as one of the most valuable Canadian cent pieces ever created, with prices reaching into the millions. Now we will talk about the next incredibly valuable Canadian 5-cent coin, the 1921 Canadian nickel, known worldwide as the king of Canadian nickels. If the 1947 dot nickel is a mystery, then the 1921 Canadian 5 cents is a legend, a coin so rare, so historically important, and so unbelievably valuable that collectors call it the $1 million nickel. Its story begins more than a century ago, in a decade of economic changes, post-war recovery, and a surprising minting disaster that accidentally created one of the rarest coins in Canadian history. In 1921, the Royal Canadian Mint produced over 2.5 million nickel coins. At first glance, there was nothing unusual. These nickels were struck normally, stored in mint vaults and prepared for distribution. But in 1922, everything changed. Canada switched the 5-cent coin from silver to nickel metal. With this change, the older silver-style nickels became outdated and unnecessary. So the mint made a decision that would rewrite coin history. They melted almost the entire 1921 production. From millions of coins, only a tiny handful survived. Some say less than 100, while others believe under 75 exist today. Most of the few survivors were pulled from circulation by early collectors before they disappeared forever. Because of this shocking melt, the 1921 nickel became one of the rarest circulating coins Canada has ever produced. And the value? Prepare for something extraordinary. A genuine 1921 Canadian nickel in high grade can sell for $150,000 to $300,000. Exceptional. Pieces certified in top condition have sold for over $400,000, and the finest known example on a museum quality coin has crossed the $1 million valuation, making it one of the most expensive Canadian coins ever seen. Even heavily worn examples, coins that spent years in circulation with scratches and marks, can still sell for $10,000 to $30,000 simply because of how few remain. Collectors love the 1921 because its rarity is not an accident of errors or mint marks. It is the result of an entire year's production being destroyed. The few that escaped the melting furnaces represent the last survivors of a vanished population. Every time one comes to auction, it becomes a numismatic event. Bidding wars break out. Private collectors compete with museums. Prices rise dramatically, and each sale sets a new record, pushing the coin's legendary status even higher. Imagine a simple nickel, minted normally, stored for years, then almost completely wiped out, now becoming one of the most valuable small coins ever made in North America. A coin that once bought candy or bread now sells for more than luxury cars, homes, or entire gold bars. That is the story of the 1921 Canadian nickel, the king of Canadian 5 cents. A coin whose value continues to soar and whose rarity has turned it into a true $1 million treasure. Now we will talk about the next rare and highly valuable Canadian 5 cents coin, the 1951 high-relief nickel composition. A secret rarity hidden in plain sight. The story of the 1951 high-relief Canadian nickel is one of confusion, experimentation, and a mint facing pressure from two sides, public demand and industrial supply. This coin was created during one of the most important anniversaries in Canadian history, the 200th anniversary of the discovery of nickel. To celebrate this moment, the Royal Canadian Mint introduced a brand new design for the 5-cent coin showing a nickel refinery, replacing the familiar beaver for just 1 year. But hidden deep within this special year lies one of the most valuable modern Canadian nickels ever made, the rare, high-relief version struck on pure nickel planchets and produced in extremely small numbers before the design was altered. In early 1951, the mint experimented with a higher relief design, meaning the details of the coin were struck deeper, higher, and more pronounced. But this design caused striking problems. The dies wore down quickly. The details didn't strike cleanly on hard nickel metal. Coins came out weak, uneven, and difficult to reproduce. The mint reacted quickly. They changed the design mid-year, switching to a lower relief version that was easier to produce. But in that short experimental period, before the change was finalized, the mint had already struck a very small number of high-relief 1951 nickels, and few collectors even knew they existed at the time. Most of these high-relief coins were mixed with regular circulation coins and lost forever. Only a small number survived, making this variation one of the most highly sought-after treasures in the Canadian nickel series. And the prices? The numbers will shock you. A certified high-grade 1951 high-relief nickel can sell for $10,000 to $30,000. Exceptional pieces in mint state. Grades have sold for $50,000 plus, depending on rarity and strike quality. And the rarest specimens, like coins preserved impeccably or from original rolls, have been valued at over $70,000, placing them among the top-tier modern Canadian nickels. Even circulated examples, if confirmed as high relief, can still fetch $1,000 to $3,000, proving just how desirable this variety has become. What makes this coin incredibly exciting for collectors is that it hides in plain sight. Most Canadians have handled 1951 nickels their entire lives, yet only a handful have ever recognized the high-relief version. Its differences are subtle. The portrait is sharper, the lettering is thicker, the relief is deeper, and only trained collectors spot the signs instantly. This uncertainty has made the 1951 high-relief nickel a coin of legends. Stories circulate of people finding one in pocket change, old jars, estate boxes, and inherited collections. Every year, a few are discovered, causing excitement across the numismatic community. A coin that looks ordinary, but carries extraordinary value. A coin struck quietly, now worth tens of thousands of dollars. A coin born from a failed experiment, but transformed into one of Canada's most desired numismatic treasures. This is the power of the 1951 high-relief Canadian nickel, a rare, beautiful, and highly valuable coin that continues to rise in value as collectors hunt desperately for the next undiscovered example. Now we will talk about the next extremely valuable Canadian 5-cent coin, the 1948 Canadian nickel, one of the scarcest regular-issue nickels ever struck. If there is a coin that perfectly captures the chaos, confusion, and minting pressure of a nation in transition, it is the 1948 Canadian 5 cents. This coin is not just rare, it is a product of political change, delayed minting, and one of the lowest production years in Canadian nickel history. The story begins in 1947. Canada's coin still carried the title Emperor of India in Latin, referring to King George VI. But after India gained independence, this wording had to be removed from all future Canadian coins. The Royal Canadian Mint prepared new dies for 1948, with the updated inscription, now without N to IMP. But a major problem struck. The new 1948 dies were delayed, months delayed. This created a minting emergency. To avoid running out of coins, Canada kept striking more 1947 nickels and marked them with a tiny dot. But the delay continued, and by the time the new dies finally arrived, the year was already well underway. As a result, the mint produced only a very small number of actual 1948 dated nickels, and this tiny mintage created one of the biggest rarities in Canadian beaver design history. While a normal year would produce millions of 5-cent coins, 1948 saw only a small fraction of that total. Collectors later discovered that many were lost in circulation, melted or simply worn out. Today, high-grade survivors are incredibly scarce, and the values reflect that rarity. And now, let's talk about the high prices that have made this coin a superstar. A certified mint state 1948, nickel can sell for $5,000 to $12,000, depending on the grade. Coins in MS65 and higher have crossed $15,000 to $20,000. But the true shock comes from auction records. The finest known examples, those preserved with sharp strikes and pure luster, have sold for over $30,000. And experts believe the best specimens may cross 40,000 plus as collectors compete for top spots on registry sets. Even heavily circulated 1948 nickels, coins that look ordinary and worn, routinely sell for $300 to $800, proving just how extraordinary the demand is. Why is this coin so popular? Because it represents a moment in history when everything had to change. The king's title, the minting schedule, and the design itself. The 1948 nickel is a time capsule from that turbulent transition. Every surviving example is a survivor of confusion, delays, and the dramatic redesign of Canada's coinage. Collectors today see it as one of the key dates in the entire beaver nickel series. Without it, no serious collection is complete. A coin with extremely low mintage, a coin with rising demand, a coin that turns heads every time it appears at auction, and a coin that transformed a simple nickel into a multi-thousand-dollar rarity. This is the story of the 1948 Canadian 5 cents, one of the most valuable regular issue nickels ever struck, and a treasure hidden in the pockets of a nation undergoing change. Now we will talk about the next rare and valuable Canadian 5 cents coin, the 1953 No Shoulder Fold NSF. Nickel, a coin born from a design change that caused national confusion. The 1953 NSF Canadian nickel is a coin that proves how a tiny design detail, barely visible to the naked eye, can create one of the most sought-after treasures in Canadian numismatics. Its rarity was not planned, not predicted, and not understood until years later. Today, it stands among the great key dates of the beaver design nickel series. The story begins in 1953, the first year of Queen Elizabeth II's reign. A young queen had just ascended the throne, and Canada needed a brand new portrait for all its coins. The Royal Canadian Mint adopted the famous Mary Gillick effigy, showing the youthful queen wearing a laurel wreath. But the Mint didn't realize they were about to create a problem that would lead to one of the most valuable nickels ever produced. The original 1953 design had no shoulder fold, meaning the queen's gown was smooth on the shoulder with almost no detail. This subtle smoothness made the portrait look flat, weakly struck, and difficult to reproduce consistently on nickel metal, which was much harder than silver. Striking issues exploded. Details wouldn't appear. Coins looked worn even when they were freshly minted. The Mint panicked. They quickly redesigned the portrait, adding a sharper line and clear detail known as the shoulder fold, SF, making the gown more defined. But by the time the new design was ready, a relatively small number of no-shoulder fold nickels had already been struck and released into circulation. Most were spent, worn out, or lost before collectors realized their rarity. And that mistake and that subtle missing detail created one of the most prized coins of the 1950s. Now let's talk about the high prices. The part every collector waits for. A certified high-grade 1953 NSF nickel can sell for $2,000 to $6,000. Coins in mint. State grades are far rarer than people imagine, and MS-65 examples have gone for $10,000 to $15,000 at major auctions. But the finest known specimens take the value to another level. Top-quality NSF nickels with exceptional strikes and luster have fetched $20,000 to $30,000, and experts predict the price will continue climbing as more collectors compete for rare, early Elizabeth coins. Even circulated NSF nickels, worn, scratched, and aged, can still sell for $150 to $400, proving that any confirmed example has impressive value. What makes this coin especially fascinating is that millions of people handled it without ever realizing its importance. A small, almost invisible design flaw turned an ordinary nickel into a powerful collectible. A coin that once bought a bus ticket, now worth thousands. A coin that once sat unnoticed in pockets. Now one of the key date rarities in the whole series, the 1953 No Shoulder Fold. Nickel is a reminder that even a tiny detail can shape history. A whisper of a line missing from the queen's gown created a numismatic marvel, and today, collectors hunt endlessly to find just one surviving piece. Now we will talk about the next extremely valuable Canadian 5 cents coin, the 1965 Large Beads Pointed 5. Nickel, a rare variety created by a minting mix-up that turned a normal coin into a treasure. The 1965 Canadian nickel seems ordinary at first glance, but behind that simple beaver design lies one of the most dramatic and surprising variety stories in Canadian coin history. This coin exists in multiple varieties: small beads, large beads, pointed 5, blunt 5. But one combination is so rare, so elusive, and so valuable that collectors refer to it as one of the holy grails of modern Canadian nickels. That coin is the 1965 large beads with the pointed 5. To understand why this coin is so special, we must go back to 1965, the first major redesign of Queen Elizabeth. II's portrait since her coronation. The Royal Canadian Mint updated the obverse with Arnold Machine's new effigy, and at the same time, the Mint experimented with different rim bead sizes, digit styles, and die punches. During this chaotic redesign period, multiple dies were used, tested, rejected, modified, and replaced. These experiments led to unplanned combinations, some extremely rare, some never meant for circulation, and some escaping unnoticed. One of those escapees became a legend. The 1965 large beads, pointed 5 nickel. The majority of 1965 nickels have small beads, but a tiny number were struck using the large beads rim, a design used briefly before being replaced. To make things even more complicated, the Mint also produced 2 different styles of the digit 5 in the date. Most coins have a blunt 5, but a small number were mistakenly paired with the pointed 5 die, creating an extremely rare combination. Large beads, heel pointed 5, one of the rarest varieties in Canadian nickel history. Very few were made, even fewer were discovered, and most were lost in circulation before collectors realized what they were looking at. This coin is so scarce that many collectors spend years hunting for it, and some never find one at all. Now let's talk about the high prices, because this is where the value becomes unbelievable. A genuine 1965, large beads pointed 5 nickel and certified. Mint State can sell for $8,000 to $15,000. Exceptional examples have reached $20,000 to $25,000 in auctions. The finest known specimens, those with perfect strikes, glowing luster, and flawless surfaces, have been valued at $30,000 plus, making them some of the most expensive modern Canadian nickels ever sold. Even circulated examples, once they are confirmed authentic, can still bring $500 to $1,500, proving that rarity alone drives this coin's extraordinary value. What makes this variety fascinating is how easily it can hide in plain sight. Thousands of collectors check their old Canadian nickels every year, hoping to find that elusive large beads pointed 5 combination. Stories circulate of people discovering one in a jar of coins, inherited from grandparents, or in old bankrolls untouched for decades. A coin that looks completely normal, yet holds thousands of dollars in hidden value. A rare variety born from a die experiment. Now one of the most hunted coins in Canada. This is the story of the 1965 large beads pointed 5. Nickel, a variety so rare and valuable that it has become a legend among collectors, transforming a simple nickel into a small metal miracle worth tens of thousands. And there you have it, a journey through the most valuable Canadian 5-cent coins ever struck. From the legendary 1947 dot nickel, the ultra-rare 1921 King of Canadian nickels, to the elusive 1951 high relief, 1948 low mintage, 1953 no shoulder fold, and the modern treasure. 1965 large beads pointed 5. Each coin tells a story of history, politics, minting accidents, and the hidden treasures that can turn a simple 5-cent piece into a life-changing collectible. These coins are more than just currency. They are pieces of Canadian heritage, frozen in metal, carrying decades of history, craftsmanship, and mystery. Collectors hunt for them relentlessly, museums prize them, and even a single coin can command hundreds of thousands of dollars, or in rare cases, millions. So next time you check your change or open an old coin box, remember, a tiny 5-cent coin might just be worth more than you ever imagined. Hidden treasures are everywhere, and the story of Canadian nickels proves that history, rarity, and craftsmanship can make even the smallest coin immensely valuable. Thank you for joining us at FM Coins. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the rarest Canadian nickels, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell because we'll continue uncovering the hidden secrets of coins from Canada and around the world. Who knows? The next $1 million coin could be sitting in your own collection.